Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, 1, 2, 1, 2. Hey there, hi there, ho there. This is Ralph Edward Hayes Jr., RHJunior, Ralph Hayes, Eddie Hayes. Coming to you live over the internet through the marvelous system of tubes. Through one particular tube known as YouTube, in an imitation of the boob tube. Bringing you my own little broadcast, my own little rant and rave session, which is basically cheaper than psychotherapy. Spleen squeezins. Can you hear it? Can you feel it? Everything is awesome. Da 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 da, ya ya da da da, da ya 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 ta ya ta ta, ya ba da ba da ba, da for hey 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 me hey home hey me hey me hey mo home hey me hey home home hey me hey home ho oi. I do not know what I'm doing. I do not know what it is I am doing. I have no clue how to. Okay, this is like, you know, going back to the origins of radio, and it's somewhere like you know, year -1. Hello, Watson, come here. I need you. I'm before that. In terms of skill and progress and professionalism. Toddler with a microphone. So how y'all doing? How y'all doing? I don't know if anybody is here yet. According to the YouTube live number of people watching meter, there's one person, one total, one. That's it. That's it. Da 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 da. I think I'm going to randomize this. Excuse me. Now, why do they have it? I don't want to play. Okay, you know, in these generic, you know, these. Okay, in these generic song lists, I really do not want to hear, you know, holiday songs or, you know. I like this one. Okay. I sort of actually did some work to, you know, got something. I scribbled out. Okay, I still haven't done anything for my own website. That's the thing of it. It's, I've only done rough sketches at most, but I need to do. And my IQ, my hindbrain is going, post something. I don't know what to post. I'm dwelling on it. I'm just going to draw something at random. It's reached the point where, you know, okay, I can't come up with a comic strip. I will post some random piece of art. Got to do something. Got to stay alive. Got to keep breathing. Got to keep moving. Like a toothless shark. I hate it when this happens. If I leave, I found that if I leave my drawing program on for too long and don't pay attention to it, it just sort of, you know, it's, you know, the controls start going goofy on it. But here I'm trying to pull up my art program again. I had to shut it down, start it back up, so I can draw something. Draw something, you bastard! Draw something. Draw anything. Okay, I'll do that. I'll draw anything. Let's see. All I've got, is just general sketch work. Let me switch you over so you can watch what I'm doing here. It's display capture. Let's see. Can I do another one? Let's see here. Audio input capture. Window capture. Cancel. Okay, we'll go with display capture, so you can see what I'm doing. Which basically consists of watching me ramble around on this thing. We've got 2 people in channel, me and somebody else. Who are you out there? Type your name. I know you're there. I can hear you breathing. That's aggravating. People don't understand. I really don't understand why people don't seem to understand that. They do not seem to understand how infuriating, how rude it is. Yeah, it really is rude. It's rude. Like you ever seen some of these stand-up comedians, man? They'll be working a room, and then some bozo will come walking in the middle of their big routine, right? Disrupting everything. And everybody's like, well, why are you picking on this guy? Why are you calling him? And the stage comedian will pick on them, start calling about, hey, what you doing, brother? Just giving them. Well, look at it from the comedian's point of view. The only thing worse is the people walking in and the people walking, just one guy getting up in the middle of the show, sidling out, you in a big hurry to get someplace, Look at it from the comedian's point of view. He's putting everything on the line. He's out there busting his hump. And it is just rude, inconsiderate. He's trying to make it's like holding a conversation and have somebody pull out their phone, whip out their cell phone in the middle of it. Sorry, I have to take this. Someday you want to reach over, just smack the phone across the room. Psh! No, you don't. That's what answering machines are for. That's what text is for. That's what callback is for. Get out of my face with this. Oh, I have to take this. Look at it from my point of view. I can't see your face. I cannot see your face. Understand? Cannot. There's no way for me to do that. Grip on this. There's no way for me to see your face. There's no way for me to hear your voice. There's no way for me to even know if you're paying attention to me. It's like, it's worse than talking to a toddler. Have you ever tried to talk to a child who's like 2 or 3 years old and they're looking at everything but you? You're like, hey, look at me. Look at me. Yes, I'm sure that patch of dirt is very interesting. Give me 0.2 of a second. But when an adult does it to you, imagine you're in a room full of people, you're trying to talk to them, and none of them will meet your eye. That's how it feels when you open a chat room and you have people pile in and then nobody talks. It's like, I'm sorry, am I wasting your time? I gripe about this a lot. You would gripe about it too. You would gripe. I don't understand this. I go on to these chat rooms, and you will see 20 or 30 people logged in, and nobody has said anything for over an hour. And it's like they're Cro-Magnons. Have they no idea how rude that is? How wasteful that is? How pointless that is? You expect to go into these mongoloids' houses and find them sitting around staring at a TV playing a blank videotape. If you're not going to talk, get off the channel, you know? You know, if you're watching, that's one thing. If you're watching a show, that's one thing. But if you're supposed to be in a chat room talking with other people, talk! I do not understand people who still frequent chat rooms that never chat. You do realize that this internet thing is not free. Do I have to explain this to you? The fact that you're taking up the line with nothing but static means you're still taking up the line. You're still using electricity. You're still using up bandwidth. You're still using up space. You're worse than spam. Spam at least tries to communicate something. They're trying to communicate a scam 99.99% of the time, but at least they're doing something with the bandwidth. You're not just pulling money out of your own pocket and lighting it on fire. You're pulling money out of other people's pocket and lighting it on fire just to amuse yourself. And you're not even paying attention to the flames. Pay. Don't waste the internet. We work too hard for it. We work too hard for it. And we have to struggle every single day to keep the wickedest people on the planet from getting their meat hooks into it. We have to struggle every single day to keep unprincipled corporations from taking it over. We have to struggle every single day to keep people like the United Nations from taking it over. We have to struggle every single day to keep the schmucks over in the EU from taking it over and turning it into a government mouthpiece. We have to fight every single day to stop censors from using it to block information. We have to fight every single day to stop criminals. And for what? So you can sit there and watch a blank screen? The way this generation wastes everything that their forefathers created for them. And I'm talking the last 2 or 3 generations, the way we waste and throw away everything our founding fathers sacrificed for. I'm amazed that the ground at our national memorials isn't just exploded as the vengeful dead have come up out of the ground demanding an accounting for what we've done to their country. Don't waste anything. Not even a cobblestone. Yeah, well, the EU sucks. They're useless. If America took all its money out of Europe, if we took all our that's why they're terrified. Trump was talking seriously about pulling all our men and everything out of Europe and out of NATO. And they all just started flopping around like fish. What are they going to do? Send us a harshly worded letter? They got nothing. They've had nothing for decades. And then you got all these idiots, they see what a toilet Europe is turning into, and and they're pissed off that Great Britain pulled out of the Brexit. They hate that. They're pissed off at that. Like, you morons. You're pissed off at your country for pulling you out of a sinking ship? Some people are just too stupid to wipe their own behinds. I swear they are. I love how it's supposed to be that Scotland allegedly voted to stay in the EU. Hundreds of years wishing for their liberation, liberation from the British, and they want to give themselves over to the French. I'm amazed their forefathers haven't erupted out of the ground to throttle them with their bare hands. What do you mean you want to stay in the bloody rush? Yeah, that's what Braveheart died for. The European Union! Yeah, schmucks. If they ever have to actually fight a war again, they're screwed. They've as C.S. Lewis put it, they geld, they castrate and bid the geldings bear fruitful. They've spent decades stripping the manhood out of their nation. The closest thing they have to that to manly men is a bunch of soccer hooligans. Man, that is sad. That is a sad sport. Yeah, everybody in the world plays it, and that does not impress me, okay? The fact that everybody in the world except America plays soccer does not impress me. I haven't even watched the stuff, and I'm seeing clips of, I'm sorry. A couple dozen European metrosexuals running around a field, falling down and trying to win an Academy Award, acting like they're dying if one of the opposing team brushes up against them. How much of a pussy? How much of a pussy do you have to be a professional athlete in front of millions of people and fall down screaming and squalling and crying and clutching your various portions of anatomy, screaming as if you're dying, just to get try and weasel a penalty kick out of a guy in a striped shirt that isn't buying it? Just how much of a how much of a nutless, dickless wonder do you have to be a European sports star? Good Lord! Everybody laughs. They go, oh, they like, they don't play football. They play hand egg. Jolly good. Yeah, put a team of your strutting, put a team of your football players out on there against a team of our football players. We'll see how it goes. "15 minutes in, you'll be trying to figure out how to put their legs on backwards. Does that sound jingoistic? Because it was meant to. I'm just mad about these people that talk smack about America. Tired of hearing it. And I'm really sick of hearing about football, soccer. No, soccer. It's called soccer, you pansies. We don't call it football because we're not allowed to touch it with. You ought to call it no hands ball. No hands, no nuts. That's the requirement for playing soccer. No hands sissy ball. That's the the European the international sport. Now, I've heard and seen about rugby. I don't know about rugby. On the one hand, yeah, they're playing for real. On the other hand, they're not smart enough to wear pads. I don't know about that. I go out on a field, see and the opposing guy is like 200 pounds of angry steroids. I'm going to be like, no, I'll wear the helmet. Hand it over. Hand over the helmet. No. You make the helmet if you don't got it. Now, I don't know, rugby is more manly. Yeah, nobody plays it. What does that tell you about the rest of the world? Not, they'll play soccer, but they won't play rugby, and they laugh at football. I'm sorry, the reason that our football players wear football gear is because they freaking need it. They freaking earned it. And even then, you got people coming in off the basketball, coming in off the gridiron, limbs sticking out in angles God never intended. Most of these guys will be retired in like 10 years, but these soccer players, they'll be out there doing Wheaties commercials in France until they're old and gray. Yeah, of course the younger ones want it because the young are stupid. Now, actually, the younger generation, Scotland it's supposed to be. Well, that's like saying, okay, look, Great Britain voted to get out of the EU, which was smart, because you don't have to be a genius to see which way things are going with the EU. The fact that the younger generation in Scotland tipped the vote in Scotland to stay is as irrelevant as, say, the vote in Iowa That's like saying, candidate XYZ won the presidential election, but Iowa voted against him. Irrelevant. A big old bowl of nothing. They got that big, right now Trump is visiting over in London. What the hell is wrong with you, Great Britain? You elected a Muslim as a mayor of London. What the hell? And a little, the bastard, he's being an absolute bastard of a host. Anyway, they got a bunch of protesters out there. They've got a blimp floating. It's a big old helium balloon that looks. It's supposed to be a giant baby Trump. They spent something like $40,000 to get that thing floating over London. Well, I think it was like 40,000 pounds, but I'm not going to do the conversion. And it's supposed to be in protest of Trump, breaking up those poor immigrant families and locking little children up in detention centers. And well, outside of the fact that that's not happening, had one guy there. He wrote them and he said, "You jackasses! You could have spent that money on helping immigrant children, but no, you spend $40,000 on a balloon." No shame, no guilt from them, of course. They have a photograph of the protest march. The big balloon floating in the background. Bunch of drag queens. I'm not lying. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not making and the foreground is nothing but drag queens and people in clown makeup in the front. One guy lying on his back with his legs in a great big wide split. So you can see his crotch hair sticking out from under his bike shorts. And we're supposed to listen to these people? We're supposed to even give them the time of day? The only thing they should have gotten was a riot hose to the head. Look. Back in the 60s and 70s, the people that marched and protested for civil rights in the United States, they went out in dignity. You see some of the photographs of these people marching for civil rights. They were out there, black people, white people, all together, three-piece suits, fully dressed suits. They were even wearing hats. That's how you know they were serious about being classy. They had the hats. And they were all clean and all dressed and they were all just marching down the street peacefully, carrying signs. And that was what they sent that's what the control freaks sent the riot hoses after. And the dogs. And these were people that, they deserved respect for what they did. For the stand they took. The freaks that are out there now? No. They're rioting animals. Their entire objective is to throw as big a tantrum as they can get until they finally provoke somebody. That's what they're hoping for. That's what they think they're hoping for. I remember the last time the rubber bullets came out, they were all out there squealing and screaming like stuck pigs on the internet. Oh, it was horrible. Wee, 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 wee. Like, you dumbasses, you were blocking the entrance to a military base. You're lucky they didn't use real bullets. They would have been fully within their the lawful rights to do so. They would have been fully within their rights to go completely Kent State on your behinds. Yeah, everybody talks about Kent State. You know, this is this was the death knell of the hippie movement back in the end of the '60s and start of the '70s. Kicker is that they showed the footage, that girl kneeling next to a dead guy. Oh, the horror, the tragedy, the brutality. They didn't show any photographs of those kids beforehand. These kids were out there setting things on fire, throwing throwing bricks through windows, throwing rocks and bricks at armed soldiers. And if you think that's trivial, oh, they were just throwing stones. Have you ever gotten hit in the head by a brick? That's lethal force right there. You can kill a man throwing a brick. Got all these idiots thinking it's going to be like Home Alone 2. The kid throws a brick off a roof and the guy gets up 3 or 4 times. No. This ain't the Three Stooges. They were ordered to open fire because those kids were coming at those college kids. Let's go. They were adults, but we got mental children, but they were still legally adults. Coming at them with rocks and bricks and sticks and pipes and God knows what else in their hands. They were opening fire in self-defense. They were just protesting for love and peace. Yeah, that's why people were coming away with bleeding wounds in their heads from flung rocks and bricks. Ugh. These little Antifa shits, the ones out there dressed up in hoodies and black masks. We're here for peace. We're here to protest fascism. They protest fascism by beating people with bicycle chains to shut them up. Yeah. Oh, you know all about freedom, kid. Every time the tables have turned on them, it's been what a surprise. They fold like wet toast. All it takes is somebody turning around and punching back, and they fold. They're a bunch of pussies. They're the Democrat Party's favorite voting bloc. Stop drawing for a minute. Start talking for a minute. Am I not using SAI's stabilizer? I have no idea what SAI stabilizer is. I'm using Manga Studio. Yeah. I have no idea what to say to that, so, yeah. Oh, let's talk about some good news. My niece, my oldest niece, Brenna, she got married a while ago, and she's got a baby on the way. I'm gonna be a granduncle sometime around March next year. Oh yeah, Manga Studio does let it has line smoothing tools, limited like all smoothing tools, but you know how it is. Every system. Oh, this one's better, that one's better, and I'm like apples and oranges. The best tool is the one you're best familiar with. Anyway, going to be sometime in March of next year. I'm going to have a new grandniece or grandnephew. I'm still recuperating from when my first niece was born over 20 years ago. Goodness. Okay, in other good news, Donald Trump has recently given a full pardon to the Hammonds. Who are the Hammonds? You will have to explain that to me in small words of one syllable or less. Now, ow. Ouch. Been fighting heat rash. I'm sure you're glad to hear about that. I was throwing everything at it, different ointments and Lotrimin ointment. Man, this like Lotrimin, little 1 ounce tube, man. It's clean you out. I just ordered like 2 boxes. I ordered online some Gold Bond medicated, extra strong. $25 for 2 containers. It's interesting how over-the-counter medicine that'll put the bite on you. Just the ordinary antibiotic cream, for like cuts and stuff. Antibiotic ointment, triple antibiotic. It's ridiculously expensive just for an ounce. I'm supposed to use this stuff for 2 weeks. You know, for a fungal infection, you're supposed to use like these creams and ointments for 2 weeks. You know how much a 2-week supply of cream or lotion or ointment that you apply twice daily comes to? I also bought some. It's supposed to be green. It's tea tree soap, and I'm left here wondering what a tea tree is. But it's supposed to be good for like skin conditions, and also, you know, it's good for your skin, and it's also supposed to be, you know, good for getting rid of fungal thises and that's, and you know. So 1 bar of soap, $4 or $5. Actually, something like $6, come to think of it. $6 for a bar of soap, $25 for some medicated powder. I've already spent at least that much on, let's see, zinc oxide ointment. I got a tube of zinc, about a half a tube of zinc oxide. I bought 2 of those tubes. Gone through 2 already. I got Lotrimin and just money. Just suck the money right out of your wallet, man. And it wouldn't be any cheaper to get it locally either, in case you're wondering. I ordered it by Amazon because I'm never quite sure when I'm going to be able to get somebody to go to the store for me. So I figure, might as well. I also spent $10 and ordered a box of candy bars. Just for the candy bars will get here last. That's the thing of it. Ah, the ranchers from back then. That's what you told her. I missed the Hammond family. They got a pardon finally. Don't know what to think of that. The government's gotten up to some nasty. People are willfully blind about something. Back Waco, the Branch Davidians. You had to be an idiot to not know that the government was off its leash. Even if, every claim they made about the Branch Davidians proved to be false. They made all sorts of accusations of, they dramatized. They didn't have any. They didn't go in there for any of the things they accused them of. They accused them of molesting and child abuse. They accused them of having a drug den, and they accused them of all sorts of things. Nothing. The only thing that was on the warrant that he had allegedly tried to sell, that the Branch Davidians, one of them had allegedly tried to sell a government agent a shotgun that was like a 1/4 inch too short. And they took that and they ran with it and they killed those people. Yeah, let's take the doomsday cult that convinced the government that the end of the world is going to be signaled by the government coming for them, and surround them with police and tanks. That's the perfect way to sell this peacefully, don't you think? And not 2 days after the fires had gone out, the government was out there with bulldozers leveling everything. Every cop in the United States was screaming that this was destruction of evidence. Didn't matter. It was Clinton's country, not ours. Oh, yeah, I know about that. Cody Wilson? Oh, yeah, he's invented a printable gun. I'm so impressed. Not, in case you haven't guessed. Look, there's a guy in Great Britain. He died a few years ago, but his blueprints are still available. He showed how you could build a semi-automatic, a shotgun, a machine gun. He showed how to make about 4 or 5 different kinds of gun and their ammo using ordinary machine tools that you'd find in somebody's garage. He even showed how to make one type of gun out of nothing but plumbing fixtures. The British government freaked and tried to shut him down, but his friends posted the stuff all over line. I've got it downloaded somewhere here. So I'm really not impressed with somebody that's come, well, I'm not really impressed with somebody that's come up with a build your own gun kit whose first step is step 1, buy a 3D printer. And frankly, this British guy's paperwork should be government documents. What I mean is they should be handing these things out to our military as part of their training. You see, in the military, they do have booklets on how to make field expedient weapons. And these instructions are crap. I've read the British guy's book. I've read the Field Expedient Guide. The Field Expedient Guide is crap. It's for designing one-shot weapons. You have to dismantle the guns to reload them, if you're ever in a position where you need to reload them. And one of the first instructions for designing the rifle is turn the wood on the lathe. That is not field expedient. Any gun design that requires you to use a lathe is not particularly field expedient. Good night, good Lord and butter. But it just goes to show, people already have the tools in their hands. Now, how many of you have read my comic, the Tales of the Questor and Quentin Quinn Space Ranger? You'll remember that there was one arc where he talks about something that happened in his past, where this one planet was approaching an economic crisis and was about to implode. And in order to help the people out, he gave them some of the most rudimentary tools he could. A cheap fusion reactor, and the most basic of replicator designs that his society had. And of course, the native government tried to suppress it because it meant their economy was tied up in a fiat currency, which is basically a scam. Fiat currency is it's a systematic method of plunder, where the wealth of the people is shuffled into the pockets of the bankers and the ruler's estate. We could go into that for several hours. Well, anyway, because they had their own energy supply and because they had their own way to manufacture anything, even food, they no longer had to the common people no longer had to depend on the fiat currency system. In fact, once they used what they had to pay off their bills, but naturally the rulers of the country, freaked because that meant that that all the wealth they had stolen was now useless for controlling the planet, and so they tried to suppress it. And the people demonstrated their innovation by using the technology that they had been gifted and inventing plasma rifles that could one-shot a tank. Given ordinary rudimentary tools necessary for survival, the populace can manufacture weapons capable of dealing with their government. Street gangs have been making things like that they call zip guns for years. One-shot guns that can fire a .22 bullet. Plumbing pipe shotguns, the works. And that's just, crude duct tape and bent nail stuff. The people who say that, even an armed populace couldn't stand up to an armored military have been unable to pay attention to history. They should get flunked in history. Yeah, well, I haven't been doing a lot of writing over the past several months. I do apologize for that. I have been on the skids for some time now. Bad health, and productivity shot to heck. I'm trying to change that. I'm trying to put my nose to the grindstone more. I really don't know what's wrong with me. I just, sometimes it reaches a point where I have to force myself to do anything remotely resembling artwork. I don't know, maybe it's a sense of, futility. I don't know how many of you have been following the anime My Hero Academia. It is currently my favorite anime. Basically, it's set in a world where nearly 80. The canon is that 80% of the world's population has some sort of quirk, aka a superpower. Of course, 99% of them are, most of the powers aren't very useful. Or have very limited use. So there's, still a handful of people who have really kick-ass superpowers. And those people, and they've got superheroes. And the protagonist, though, is a kid who spent his entire life of dreaming of becoming a superhero, like his idol, All Might. Thing of it is that the kid turns out to be one of the rare people, the 20%, the vanishing 20% who have no power and never will. The interesting thing is canonically the way they tell that somebody, they just don't have the genetics for superpowers, is if their big toe and their middle toe are the same length. Well, I mean, if you're going to have a genetic marker, it's just an interesting note on the story. Anyway, he turns out to be one of those few that will never have a power. And he runs into his idol named All Might. And it turns out that All Might was one of those people who was never going to have a power either. But he had a mentor with a very particular power called One for All. And one of the features of that power is that it could be passed down from person to person. And each person it got passed down to, the power would be stronger. And All Might, it turns out, is on the ropes. He got grievously injured in a fight with a supervillain some time ago, and he's been hiding it ever since. But he can only, at the point he meets the kid, he can only be super powerful and super strong 3 hours a day, and it's getting worse. His regular form that everybody sees is great, big, huge, muscular, Superman type. But when he lets his power go, he shrinks down to this scrawny, almost skeletal guy who's coughing blood. He's that bad off. And he has been looking for someone to pass the power down to. And it just so happens he witnessed the protagonist performing an incredibly brave and foolhardy, but very brave and heroic deed earlier that day. One of his schoolmates had been attacked by a villain, and he had dived in to rescue him when even the cops were all standing around, scared to move. Anyway, he picks this kid and trains him and transfers One for All to him. The catch is that he can't use it at full strength. The power is, he had to spend several months just training up his body just to contain the power. Because at this point it is so strong, anytime he uses it, it literally shatters his body from the inside out, shatters his bones. And by this is season 2 by now. He's finally managed to reach a point where he's learned how to control the powers, so he doesn't necessarily break his arm, break his arm or his leg every time he uses it. But he can only use it at a 10% strength maximum. And he keeps getting in situations where he has to go all out with it or die. And he's only a kid, and it's doing a huge toll on his body. And that's part of the one of the conflicts in the story. I love the show. It's great. It's silly, it's animated, it's corny sometimes, but it's also got that old-fashioned superhero spirit in it. It's unapologetically golden age, and the heroes are real heroes, and they strive to be greater than they are. None of this deconstruction crap that you get with everybody else, and none of the social justice bullpucky either. But there's one thing that gripes the heck out of me. It's obviously written in Japan, because it turns out, you don't learn this until several, episodes in. They have laws on the books in their, it's set in Japan, and it's against the law to use your quirk without a license. Well, actually, you can use your quirk, you just can't use it you can't use it to fight crime, or even in self-defense against a criminal without a license. So they've had several episodes where these high school kids who are, they're being attacked out of the blue by villains, and they have to beg for permission to defend themselves. Some days you just want to grab an entire society by the neck and just rattle them until whatever it is they got floating around in that bubble tea inside their skulls floats to the surface. Just, what is wrong with you people? My Hero Academia. They haven't got the sense, these people, they don't realize. I mean, think about it. Even if you don't aspire to the principle of the right to self-defense, this literally is an unenforceable law. Because I'm sorry, if you've got like super strength or laser eyes, or you can shoot sonic beams out your butt, and somebody tries to attack you and rob you and kill you, you're going to use those powers and screw the popo, Oh no, they take it quite seriously. They're not satirizing anything. They think it's perfectly, it's obvious they think it's perfectly reasonable that it's against the law for people to use their own powers. In any capacity of self-defense. This is a society that for thousands of years has been used to, deeply ingrained with the idea of having to ask permission to exist from the higher tiers. It's sad. Some things you can't purge in a single lifetime, or even multiple ones. There's two things wrong with that law. First of all, you know what a bill of attainder is? all these superhero registration laws, they amount to what is called a bill of attainder. It's basically a law that a bill of attainder is where they write a law where you have to pay a fine for existing. Like suppose you had to buy a license. You know, every month you had to pay a license fee for being a Jew. That would be a bill of attainder. It would be horribly illegal, particularly in this country. They had a, you know, they passed that law because the reason we came here in the first place. It was basically, you know, it became a crime to be a pilgrim. Coincidentally, the Pilgrims were not Puritans. The Puritans came later. The Pilgrims were a different sect. People get confused about that. They made a law. You know, you had to pay a fine or a fee or pay a license or, well, bills of attainder. And every superhero registration act is basically a bill of attainder. It's basically saying that somebody, that if you are born with a particular gift, ability, or talent, that you have to have a license to use. That's like being forced to pay a license to have legs. It's immoral and unjust. Secondly, there's the issue of the right to self-defense. And it's been a long understood moral principle that it's morally indecent to have the capacity to help somebody in aid and to stand by and watch them bleed out. But it's such a popular trope because everybody's scared of the idea of people having the ability to act of their own accord. They're terrified of the notion of their neighbor having something they don't and using it. You know, all these anti-gun, like these people who are afraid of, anti-gunners. People that want to eliminate the right to bear arms. They go, oh, my neighbor, I can just see my neighbor getting a bunch of guns and going out on a shooting spree, killing people. And then they're convinced that if their neighbor had a gun, they'd go on a killing spree. What they're doing, that's called projection. Because in their deepest fears, they realize that they themselves are pathologically violent, and if given an opportunity, would exercise it. They demonstrate their pathology by the fact that they use force against their neighbors anyway. If you it doesn't matter whether you use a board with a nail through it or a loaded politician. You're still using force against your neighbor. They want to coerce their neighbor into behaving the way they want. I've got a pump action shotgun here. I've never fired it. I've got a box of ammo I've never used. I would very much like to be able to take it out, get some probably. I haven't actually sincerely fired a gun in years, decades even. I have fired one, but it's been ages. So I would need to be trained. It's just sitting in a gun, one of those soft cases, right next to my computer, right next to the box of ammo. Never to be, it's never been used. Never, I hope it never will be. I don't live anywhere. I couldn't exactly walk out on my back porch and test fire the thing. Get the cops show up, man. But anyway, Beg your pardon. We no longer. It's frustrating. We live in a society where nobody understands any longer. What used to be obvious common sense. You have a right to defend yourself. You not only have a right to defend yourself, you have a responsibility to. That making good people helpless does not make bad people harmless. But you talk to these college kids coming out, and it's like talking, like they stare at you like a cow at an oncoming train. It's incomprehensible to them. You come away from somebody that you try and explain an obvious truth to somebody. Something that's not just a philosophy or an opinion or a deeply religiously held belief, but objectively, measurably true. And you walk away and nothing's changed, and you've wasted your time, and you can't help and you always feel like you failed. You did not pierce the darkness, you know, and you struggle to figure out why can't they grasp this. It's the biggest heartbreak of failed communication. it's really a bewildering experience. You know, always fact check yourself. Always fact check yourself. Because it's easy to believe that, you know, it's easy to believe something stupid and be convinced that why can't anybody see the truth? And not be aware that you're making a gross mistake yourself. Okay, you want to waste your breath. Talk with somebody about creation versus evolution, or if you want to get technically termed intelligent design versus evolution. Look, we know certain things. We supposedly accept certain things as proven laws of science and physics. The first one being the laws of entropy. The laws of thermodynamics. You try and point out that the very basis of evolutionary theory violates the laws of physics, and you will see them commit acts of mental gymnastics that would make the flying Wallendas gape in disbelief. You start with the principle of arguing somebody on a matter of reason is to start with a principle that you both agree on. You know, do we agree that the law of entropy applies? Do we agree that the first three laws of thermodynamics universally apply? That all scientific evidence has pointed to that fact. You point out that to go from molecules to man, which is what evolution is, no matter how you look at it, it requires the assumption that random changes will result in an increase in information in DNA. From nothing to an entire blueprint for a human being. Or for a Douglas fir, or for any other form of life. And we know for a fact that genetics is so incredibly complex that it takes all our greatest minds just to poke at it. Oh, coincidentally, you ever heard of this thing, the so-called junk DNA? Surprise, surprise, it isn't junk. They found that, they tested that theory fairly recently and found out, nope, not true. There's no such thing as junk DNA. There's damaged DNA, but every bit of the DNA in your body serves a purpose. That theory went down the toilet with the same as vestigial organs. They used to have a list of like a half dozen different organs in the human body that were supposed to be vestigial, have no real purpose. The tonsils, the appendix, so on and so forth. Turns out every last one of them has a vital function in the human body. The tonsils, they're part of the they're part of the immune system. The appendix, part of its purpose is to help capture debris, things like fingernails, bits of bone, things like that. If I'm remembering that correctly. And you try and point out other things too, just basic common sense. They go, well, we figured out evolution 100 years ago. 200, how long was it? Charles Darwin, 200 years, close to it. 150, 200 years. The theory of evolution has only been accepted in scientific circles as fact for about 100 or so years. The fact that the consensus fallacy. We've had other beliefs. Phlogiston. Look that one up. Ether. There were scholars during Columbus's time knew that the Earth was round, but the huge debate was how large was it. Columbus was on the wrong side, actually, which is why he even proposed his circumnavigation of the globe. He was trying to find a way to get to the West Indies, to the East Indies, to the East Indies rather, and they went the wrong way. It turned out, if he had known that the globe was as large as it was, if he had believed that the globe was as large as it was, he would have never proposed his expedition, because they would, if there had been no land masses between Europe, if the Atlantic and the Pacific Ocean had all been one big ocean, they would have starved to death before they got there. Phlogiston, Phlogiston. For hundreds of years, for at least 2 or 3 times the length of time that we've believed in evolution, surgeons and the medical sciences used textbooks for surgery that were based off the bodies of monkeys. Errors, not merely errors, but profound ones, can become part of the scientific community consensus. Anyway, you talk to them and you say one thing and they hear another, and you feel so helpless and so hopeless, because you're going, what am I doing wrong? What am I not explaining to them? What words are not translating into whatever language they're speaking? What is it I'm doing wrong? My father tried to, when we went on a door-to-door witnessing years ago. One little old man, farmer, lived by himself, and Dad was talking to him about Christianity. He tried to explain salvation by grace, and no matter what he said, that little old man, well, I'm working at it as hard as I can. And nothing my father said, or the other men that were with him said, could not get across to the man that salvation was a gift. You don't work at it. You ask for it and receive it. But this man apparently had spent his entire life believing that he was going to rope climb his way to heaven. And the concept of salvation by grace, just you might as well have been standing there going, wanna. You might as well have been standing there saying potato. No translation, no understanding. So what can you do for them? I don't know. They've got all sorts of mental traps. You should talk to somebody about global warming sometime, or climate change, or any of the other shibboleths about environmentalism, and they've got all sorts of instamatic, automated, self-propelled mental defenses. You point out that you point out the evidence, and if you explain to them that this theory, the temperatures have not been rising for the past 20 years, they go, oh well, that's just and they got all sorts of somebody's in the pocket of big oil. Wish to God I was in the pocket of big oil. I could stand some money. If you believe as they do, you're scientific only as long as you believe as they do. Let's be fair, we're all guilty of that. That's why I say fact check yourself. Check the math. Check your own sources. Check everything. Nobody wants to, people don't want to do that. Environmentalism is the new religion. Recycling is a sacrament. They did this one thing. Penn and Teller did one episode of their TV show BS. You know what it means. And they opened up. They did a whole show on recycling, and pointed out recycling is essentially bullshit. And they pointed out, first of all, they opened up with a prank they pulled on. They went to one of these recycling, one of these neighborhoods where everybody has recycling bins out front, with the sort out their garbage. Oh, we're testing out a new recycling system, and they laid out something like a half dozen different bins with ridiculous different. Okay, this is for this is for like the animal fats and bones and stuff, and this is for the vegetables, and this over here is for the paper, and this over here is for the for the plastic wrap, and this is for the glass, different, and we want to see how efficient this is, and and they had these people racing a stopwatch to see how fast they could sort their trash into half a dozen different bins. It was hilarious. It was obviously, and they finished up. They had this one woman. They asked her, "What do you think of the system?" And he said, "Well, it makes me feel good knowing that I'm helping the environment." And then they explained to her that it's all a fraud. Just boom. Anyway. It's not about doing good for them. It's about feeling good about themselves. Everybody wants to feel good about what they do. Everybody wants that. Everybody wants to, what they do. They want to feel good about what they do. They want to feel good about the work they work at. They want to feel good about the beliefs they espouse. They want to feel good about, how they are with their neighbors and with their friends and with their community. But we want it so bad. We want that good feeling so bad that we can be suckered into doing the most horrible things just for that feeling, whether it's deserved or not. There are people out there, these women out there that are protesting for abortion, pro-abortion, pro-abortion. My body, my rights, and so on and so forth. They feel good about themselves. They feel good. They're killing they're killing babies. They're supporting the killing of babies, and they feel good about themselves for doing it. These environmentalists push. These people that are pushing. These people that are pushing recycling. They don't care that recycling doesn't work. You know the reason that copper, you know the reason you get money for copper and aluminum when you recycle them is because it's easier to get those metals to recycle those metals than to make new metal out of the ore in the ground. If recycling worked, they'd pay you for your trash. Even back when they used to pay people to, to recycle their newspapers, you could make maybe a nickel for a wagon full of paper. And nowadays you have to pay through the nose to have somebody haul it away in 3 different bags. If recycling was effective, they'd pay you for your trash. You wouldn't need to sort it. They'd do it for you. And they'd thank you when you handed them your trash. But it doesn't. It costs a fortune. They burn more fossil fuels recycling this stuff than they would if they made the stuff from scratch. They waste thousands and thousands of man-hours resorting that trash, by the way. Because if you get some paper in their plastics, it'll bog up the whole system and wreck everything. And then most of it ends up in a landfill anyway. But it makes people feel so good about themselves. Ooh, so good. Rub your tummy, feel good about yourself. Doing good, on the other hand, doesn't always make you feel good. Doing the right thing often hurts. Doing the right thing often makes you feel miserable. It can make you feel sad and unhappy and ashamed of yourself. It can make you feel guilty. It can depress you. It can bore you. That's one of the things. Doing good often is the most boring thing on the planet. I have no idea why YouTube doesn't accept links. Well, probably they're trying to prevent spam. But you know how that ball bounces. Oh, give me a break on this. Okay, we've got the, in the beginning there were ads. And everybody said, okay, fine. Then the ads became jackasses. You started getting pop-up ads. You started getting pop-under ads. You started getting ads that talked or sang or played loud sound files while you were trying to do something. Many of them you could not stop. And so, lo, the people came forth with ad blocker. And it was good. Now, it's the return, it's the Empire Strikes Back. They've come out with ad blocker blockers. If you have ad blocker on, they'll pop up another, apparently these sites that run ads think that a bigger, more obnoxious pop-up ad is the way to go if people aren't looking at their ads. They pop up and ads that turn off your ad blocker. Requesting you, please turn off your ad blocker so we can continue to keep this, etc., 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 etc. Or they won't let you into the site at all if you don't turn off your ad blocker. The ad blocker. Well, guess what? They've already got people who are coming out with little apps that are ad blockers. I said that right. Ad blockers. That trick the site into thinking you're not using ad blocker on them. And so now they're trying to, now the ad people are trying to come out with ad blockers. and you just want to punch them in the nuts and go, try making unobtrusive ads again. I don't care if you have a banner ad. I don't mind a banner ad here or there, or a little square ad over there. What pisses me off is I turn on a website and suddenly sound files start playing, videos start playing, music starts playing. And what's worse is that several of them will start playing at once. It's a harble-garble of noise. And you can't stop it. You click on link after, where the hell is this music coming? Where's this noise coming from? It's an invasion of privacy. It's an invasion of your space. It's as rude as jumping in someone's face on the street and saying, buy this product, buy this product. These same people would shoot somebody if they did this if somebody did it to them in real life. Buy this product, buy this product. Their bodyguards would jump him. You know, the son of a bitch responsible for spam, there's actually one person in particular who was responsible for the invention of spam. He is currently living, I believe, in Brazil, because they don't have an extradition treaty. There are like 2 or 3 different world courts that want his ass. They say something like 30 to 40% of the bandwidth of the entire internet is taken up with spam because of this man. If we ever go into a serious cyber war, they're going to have to execute him for treason, because he crippled our nation's digital capacity, our networking capability. And I'll be one of them out there in the field. I'd be one of them out in the field playing soccer with his head. We can't have nice things. This is the voice that comes in my head whenever this kind of thing comes up. This is why we can't have nice things. You know, a lot of conspiracy theorists talk about, you've heard of this, the 200 mile a gallon carburetor, the 100 mile a gallon carburetor. It's supposed to be some guy invented an engine, a carburetor or some other engine widget add-on that would give a car over 100 miles to the gallon, right? And supposedly the oil companies bought it up and sat on it. You know, they bought the patent and hid it. And this is, tinfoil hat territory. Oh, that's ridiculous. They'd never do that. Well, submitted for your approval. You know the Dyson vacuum cleaner? The Dyson vacuum cleaner. It's supposed to be very revolutionary, and apparently it is, because originally Dyson, after he invented his vacuum cleaner, went to vacuum cleaner companies and tried to sell it to them, and they refused. They didn't want anything to do with it. So he went out and started his own company and started selling them. And later on, one of these executives spoke to him and said, darned, if we knew you were going to go in business for yourself, we would have bought the patent and sat on it. Because, you see, they had the vacuum cleaner industry exactly where they wanted it. All nice and tidy and substandard. This is what happened to Tucker and his car, which is like 50 years more advanced than anything on the road. Cronyism leads to this sort of thing. And, if people, this is why an open market is so vitally important. As long as a lot of the things people are complaining about corporations doing, that's not capitalism. Okay, if you think that's capitalism, thank you for displaying your ignorance. We'll be going over it shortly with a fine-tooth comb. That's not capitalism. That's cronyism. The entire problem with cronyism is that what it amounts to is that these people have a great deal of money and access to corrupt politicians. And why do they have access to corrupt politicians? Because the politicians are for sale. Why are the politicians for sale? Because the government took over most of the details of buying and selling. As one man put it, when the government is in charge of buying and selling, the first thing to be bought and sold are politicians. This is why laissez-faire capitalism is so vital. The government should have as little to do with running the open market as possible. The only duty of the government in the open marketplace is to act as a guard to prevent theft and fraud and coercion. Those are the only things it's supposed to be for. You don't hire a mall cop to run the businesses. And that's the role of the government, to be a mall cop. Not to be a corporate executive in charge of all the stores in the mall. The excesses of the robber barons were not the excesses of capitalism. They were the excesses of cronyism. They were the excesses of government that had grown powerful and started controlling everything and gave them a lever where they could put their money. Now, this is all the stuff I talk about, this is stuff you should have been studying in school. But again, it's government-run schools. What do you expect? No, I saw this one statement once. It was saying, it said, no one is going to educate you in what you need to know to overthrow them. No one is going to give you the education you need to overthrow them. The purpose of public education is not to create independent, self-sufficient American citizens. The purpose of public education is to create obedient servants to the state. Ones that are just smart enough, just educated enough to do what they're told, and just dumb enough to believe that it makes them smart. And I don't care what country you go to. I don't care if Japan is 15 places ahead of us, in math. Their school system is crap just like ours. They're in the same crap bucket as we are. Government-run education. They are not a free nation. Half of the rights we take for granted don't exist in Japan. They look like a Western society, but they are seriously depleted when it comes to actual constitutional civil rights. And don't even get me started on China. That's a totalitarian state that has gotten very good at aping a free capitalist society. They're parasitic. The Chinese system, the nation of China, is a parasite on the free states of the world. If it were not for the free nations of the world being willing to throw all sorts of money at China, China would not be able to stand on its own 2 feet. And the reason we had Tiananmen Square is because China was artificially sustained. The Socialist Republic of China, the People's Republic of China, was artificially sustained by trade from the free world. If Nixon had not given China favored trade status, China would have collapsed along with the People's Republic of China would have collapsed within moments of the Soviet Union collapsing. When you engage in open trade with a tyranny, all you make is a fat tyrant. Because it's not the people who are getting the fat of the land here. All the best is going to the oligarchy that runs a country. Now, what do I mean? What does the term oligarchy mean? Oligarchy means a small group of people that run everything. That's all it means. And it also, and this is the thing of it, all government systems trend towards becoming an oligarchy. Some of them slower than others. Some few, such as constitutional republic, have breaks and countermeasures to prevent it or to reverse it. But all systems of governance trend towards an oligarchy. Democracy, communism, socialism. Eventually it boils down to a handful of people who are in charge and are reaping all the benefits. America has become more and more of an oligarchy daily. The people in Congress live like perfumed princes. If we knew how the average congressman lived, if we were really fully aware of how gratuitously they live, there would have been a second American Revolution decades ago. There are people who said that a stay in Congress should have been treated a lot like jury duty. You get sequestered. They give you 3 hots and a cot, and you serve your term, and then you go home. And with no luxuries or anything else to make it seem like a good idea to keep the job. But really, that sounds great. Stick it to the congressman. It all boils down to the fact, again, the reason that congressmen can be bought and sold is because they have so much to buy and sell in the first place. They have ridiculous amounts of power, and all the legislation they've written over the decades has given them incredible amounts of power and control over every aspect of American life. And when you see corporate CEOs and companies and corporations buying influence with politicians, wait. Back yourself up. It's, let me put it this way. If you saw somebody, when you see a shopkeeper paying a gangster protection money, do you blame the shopkeeper? When you see a story, you watch a movie with gangsters, or you better pay up because this is a nice store. It'd be a real shame if something caught fire. Be real sad if something happened to it, and the poor shopkeep pays half of what he made to the gangsters to keep his. That's the real relationship between these corporations and the politicians. The person paying the Danegeld is not the one with the power. These corporations are not buying influence, they're paying protection money to crooked congressmen. Now, you may have heard, you may remember, you may not even be old enough to remember. Back during the Clinton administration, Bill Clinton went after Bill Gates. He sicked the IRS on him. He sicked Congress on him. They had hearings and everything. What was the accusation? They accused Bill Gates of running a monopoly. What was their evidence? Zero. One of the things they claimed as proof that Bill Gates was running a monopoly with Microsoft is that he did not include other companies' browsers in Windows. That's it. Seriously. That's the equivalent of saying that Coca-Cola is running a protection racket because it doesn't sell 3 cans of Pepsi with every 6-pack. Anyway, the reason this happened, up until the Clinton administration, Bill Gates and Microsoft did not pay anything to any politician. You know, they made no political donations. After all that mess was finally over, you'd better damn well believe that Bill Gates has been cracking open his checkbook every single year for both sides of the aisle. You want to put a hard stop to all this so-called campaign finance corruption? Step 1, take away all that power. Trim the power of Congress back to constitutional levels. Back when the Constitution was first written, we were supposed to have one representative for something like every 3,000 people. Now we've got one representative for every 300,000. Not even that little. Congress, you know, the House of Representatives should be the size of a football stadium. Congress no longer represents you. You got one guy who's supposed to represent a couple of million people, and he's got no clue about any of them. Even if he lived in his own state 24/7 instead of living inside the Beltway, he'd never get a full grasp of the people he was supposed to be representing. Move it back to the original constitutional levels. You might see congressmen paying a little bit more attention, and you'd see a lot fewer people handing out huge sums of money to congressmen for one lousy vote. For instance, if California had like 200 or 300 representatives instead of 2 or 3, they would ironically have less influence, because nobody would be able to easily or subtly buy off all 200 or 300 California representatives. And you wouldn't have one, and you wouldn't have 2 or 3 people from, the California representatives all voting as if they lived in the same neighborhood in Beverly Hills. You'd have an actual representation of the populace of the state of California, which I am informed is a lot more conservative than footage of Los Angeles would lead you to believe. Oh, but such a huge Congress would never get anything done. Oh, see me cry a river? half the problem is that Congress decides that they're not getting anything, so they have to do everything they possibly can as fast as they can. Do stupid things faster and with more energy. Yay! It is to the benefit of the United States as a whole that Congress be slowed down in its pursuit of folly. Ouch. I'm a little achy. I have no idea what that noise is. Man, noise. No, yeah. You get free music, you get what you pay for. Mixed quality at best. Ow. Kind of ouch. Ah. My. Sort of running out of concepts to talk about. Don't ask me why I just thought of this. I remember these old Superman comics, Metallo, the man with a kryptonite heart. He's a cyborg. All he is a brain and a cybernetic body. He's got a kryptonite heart that powers him. And one scene shows him going on a rampage through a movie theater, trying to get Superman's attention for a fight. And he's run, you little pink puddle of flesh. And he turns around and there's this black kid sitting in the front row with his arms crossed. He says, I ain't pink, and I ain't going until I get a refund for my movie ticket. I don't know why that struck me as so funny. It just don't ask me why I thought of that, man. I miss the days when heroes were fun. Oh my. Okay, now what was I thinking of? I lost my train of thought. Ran off on its own. It's too little to be out on its own. Somebody catch it and bring it back. Let's take it from the top. Okay, comic books. They've killed themselves. You know what? You know why superhero movies are doing so well? Nostalgia. Nostalgia. So many thousands of people longing desperately for the superheroes of their youth. Think about it. The superheroes, Spider-Man in the Spider-Man movies, he was cool. This Captain America in the Captain America movies, he wasn't some angsty, I don't know what the American vision is anymore. He wasn't some whiny loser. None of the Marvel movies have been just swallowed with this social justice warrior crap. The Scarlet Witch doesn't issue an apology every time she strikes a sexy pose. Back when they had hairs on their chest, you know what I'm saying? Back when they still had testicles. Now the comic books aren't fit to read. People pick up a comic and they see, they pick up Iron Man and some black chick is wearing the uniform and spitting social justice rhetoric out of either corner of her mouth. You're like, what the hell is this? Thor has been turned into a woman. Spider-Man is a half Muslim, half Hispanic, just half black, half Hispanic, and then Captain Marvel is a lesbian, and just on and on and on and on and on. And they wonder why nobody wants anything to do with it. Yeah, that's it. They're good movies. You know why they're good movies? Because they don't have any of that social justice crap all over them. But the comics have all that crap. Twice over. They piss in, once they piss in it, they love the flavor, so they buy it. And then they can't understand why nobody else wants a sample. They must all just be sexist or homophobes. Well, let's start with it. Okay, I'm not going to apologize for not liking homosexuality. All right. If you got an issue with that, there's the door. Don't let the door hit you where the good Lord splits you, because I don't care. It's a perversion. And until they change the definition of the word perversion, it's still a perversion. And even after they do change the definition of the word perversion, it's still a perversion. We've had it force-fed to our society for the past 30 years. And it's done nothing but poison us. And it's already, we predicted years ago, we were accepting homosexuality. What are we going to be forced to expect next? What are we going to be forced to accept next. And you know what we found out we were going to have to accept next? Guess what? You know, this is the thing of it. Back in the 80s and 90s, saying what we were saying we're going to have to accept bestiality next. And we were caught by, I'll admit it, I've been caught by surprise. It's not bestiality that's coming up from the, coming up through the pack. It's pedophilia. And I realized I gave our society too much credit. There are people, there are the entire boards of psychiatrists trying to normalize pedophilia. Trying to get it declassified, they no longer classify it as a psychological aberration. They're trying to normalize it. They got people lobbying to lower or eliminate the age of consent. You got. Do you know that in Mexico right now the age of consent is 12? Welcome to America, my fence-jumping little friend. Si, senor. And I noticed about the time that the pederasts started pushing for acceptance is when they started referring to the slippery slope as a logical fallacy. You have to have epic levels of stupidity to believe that the slippery slope is a fallacy. I'm talking epic levels of blind, ignorant stupidity. There are potted plants with more grasp of society than a person that doesn't believe in things sliding in the wrong direction. We've already been forced to accept sodomy. Now they're pushing for the right to start scooping up kids. One of the things that they've been teaching kids in these health classes in public schools is that if you're uncertain about your homosexuality, it's always a good idea to find yourself an older man or woman to help guide you through these things. And no, I'm not making that up, and I'm not exaggerating, and it's not a straw man either, by damn. I am so dang sick of people calling an unvarnished truth a straw man. We had promiscuity shoved down our society's throat. We had every sexual deviancy imaginable. We're getting every sexual deviancy imaginable forced down our throats, and we're being persecuted for taking a stance against it. Even the smallest stance against it is a red rag to a bull for them. They will trample you under if they can, and they'll look for an excuse. You remember that one Christian bakery? Lesbian, gay couple came in, demanded that they make them a wedding cake, and he said, no, we can't do that. It's against our moral and religious principles. We cannot do that, and we will not do that. What they don't tell you What is never mentioned is that this couple had gone from bakery to bakery looking for somebody who would say no. They weren't looking for a wedding cake, they were looking for a crusade. They were looking for a sacrificial goat. Now they got restaurants and companies throwing people out for being police officers or soldiers, or for having a pro-Trump hat, having a Trump hat on. It's just one rule for them, one rule for you. And they don't even see any hypocrisy in it. Deep down you're thinking, they've got to feel something, they got to feel at least a little twinge of guilt about the hypocrisy. They got to be at least aware that they're being hypocrites. They aren't. They cannot comprehend their own hypocrisy any more than a dog can comprehend higher math. Oh my Lord. Oh, that's an old wheeze too. How critics can refer to the feminist characters and the camp counselors and all the other, the leftist characters in my comic strips. They refer to them as straw men. Straw men is where you oversimplify or misrepresent somebody's stance so as to knock it down more easily. This is not a misrepresentation. Some of them are verbatim quotes. I don't have to write straw men. In fact, I often have to tone down some of the more ridiculous things because nobody will ever believe this. I couldn't have imagined people running around in the street wearing vagina hats in my wildest delusions. I seriously couldn't. I couldn't have imagined that. I couldn't have imagined anybody that would do something like that who wouldn't be ostracized as a disgusting freak even by their own people. But no, now we've got to marching in. Vagina hat. That's probably going to be my dying phrase. I'll be like 100 years old and lying on oxygen. He said, "What was the most stunning thing that happened to you in the course of your life, Mr. 100-year-old man?" And my last words will be, "Vagina hats." What a legacy. But oh my God. Oh, God have mercy on me. God have pity on me. How do you cope? How do you live? How do you deal? I couldn't have even begun to have imagined some of the things that I have seen in this world being done by people who are supposedly mature adults. I remember seeing footage, just random clips of so-called adults in college over the past year or so protesting, screaming, yelling, rolling around on the floor. They looked like toddlers. They looked like, I'm not joking, I'm not exaggerating, I'm not making it up, and I'm not I'm not making a straw man here. I'm talking, they literally, they looked like giant mentally retarded children. Screaming, and this one woman, she was just double over screaming so loud, like an angry, like an angry 2-year-old who had had her lollipop taken away. It was awful. And we're supposed to engage these barely literate monsters in political discussion? The only thing we should be giving them, we're supposed to give them a platform for public discourse. No, the only thing we should be giving them is a bitch slap in the mouth and directions to go home and sit in a corner for a day or two. Other people have brought this up, pointed out, the latchkey kids of the 90s are the college protesters of today. Back in the late 90s, it was a big thing that many parents, especially on the hard left, were pushing for more public daycare. More daycare, more daycare, more daycare. And parents by the thousands were dumping their kids in these daycare centers, where you had maybe one adult worker for every 15 kids. We're talking kids as young, from infant up to 2 years old, with the predictable results. They become monstrous brats, and it's not really the child's fault either, because you got one little kid desperately in need of adult care, supervision, and nurturing and observation, and they come in there, and their caregiver is busy paying attention to 14 other kids. And so they do the only thing they're capable of doing in order to get attention. Being a good little girl isn't it. They threw tantrums. Because it was only the screaming kids that got any attention from these daycare workers. And that was in the good daycares, okay? We've got an entire generation of children. They grew up in the formative years. The only way they could get the care and attention and the sad substitute for love that they did, the love they desperately needed, was to spend their first 5-10 years of their life throwing tantrums. And now they're adults and they don't know how to get attention any other way. So they go out and they scream and they yell and they throw things and they slap people and they roll around the ground kicking. And they behave in a way that would have gotten a 5-year-old child a paddling and would have been a humiliating remembrance for the rest of their lives. What's sad is these people, 10, 20, 30 years from now, when they've finally grown up, they're going to have to look back at those days and just start. And they'll just start to get the inkling of being ashamed of how they behaved, and by then it'll be too late. I've got some shameful memories in my past. I have things that I did when I wasn't even in double digits yet, that still make me cringe in humiliation and embarrassment. Do you understand what I'm saying? When I was, humiliating. And I'm 47 years old and I still cringe to think of some of the things I did back when I was a little bitty kid. I can't imagine what it's going to be like when they're in their 50s, remembering what they were like in their 20s. What's really horrifying, I've met people who grew up in the Woodstock era. I've known them, I've worked with them. They were proud of themselves for how they acted. Oh, and there's one woman in particular. I was talking about some of the things that the hippies had gotten up to, and she just blew up. I was one of those hippies, and I'm proud of how of the noble causes. And still hadn't grown up, still hadn't learned shame. She was a woman in her 50s. Too many of us, I'm going to include myself in this, we got so many things that we've done, and so few of us are rightfully as ashamed as we ought to be. Shame is an underrated emotion. Now, I don't know if let's lump a couple of things together. Now, you know my gripe about the Jedi way, from Star Wars. And but now, if you've ever played World of Warcraft, there's one expansion that came out. It's called the Mists of Pandaria. And this entire new continent was introduced to the gameplay. All right. And this particular continent, it was inhabited by several dozen new races. Well, not several dozen, about maybe 5 or 6 new races, particularly the Pandarans, which are basically panda people. And it's very Chinese themed, very Asian. It's a lot of fun. I personally enjoyed it because it is a very goofy sense of humor. And the people that wrote, weren't afraid to laugh at themselves, and they obviously had a good time creating it. And you got a lot of these old timers, some of these gamers. They take my online role playing game seriously, just full of just ruin forever. But I enjoyed it. I still enjoy playing that area, that region. And you have to if you're trying to get your character up to level 100, you have to go through it. But anyway, one of the things is that one of the running themes of Pandaria is that there are these evil spirits called the Shah. And they're black, they're ghostly things that is sort of black and white and looks sort of like a half melted chocolate, and a half melted chocolate cow popsicle ice cream pop. You know what those are. But and your presence has awoken the Shah, and they're coming. Apparently 1,000 years ago, their emperor, did something transcendent and imprisoned the Shah in the earth, and now the Shah are awakening again, and you have the Shah of guilt and the Shah of violence and the Shah of doubt, and you get the idea. All the so-called negative emotions. And because you brought all your negative vibes, and it doesn't matter whether you play Horde or Alliance. You still have to go through this where they preach at you. You brought your negative vibes to our land and have woken the Shah, and it's all your fault. And the Shah can wreck a bunch of stuff. And basically, you're railroaded into being the bad guy. Even though canonically, the Horde arrive and basically start pillaging and kidnapping children, and just basically being the a-holes that the Horde are. But but the Horde and the Alliance are just the same. Morally illiterate hypocrites that write this stuff. Anyway, that's what gets me. Even though the Pandarans have some ongoing wars on their continent, okay? But it's your fault. You brought your negative vibes here that have woken the Shah of war. They've got a giant wall in one part of the country that keeps these alien, keeps this tribe of bug people from sweeping over the country, and in the north they're having a war with these yak people, and you get the pic, and then they have problems with the hose and all over the place, and but somehow it's your negativity that your negative vibes that you've brought into their country that's wrecked everything. You are all genocidal monsters, typical, assholery. But it's the same story. It's the same story as with the Jedi. Look, let me put it this way. We have people who do not feel doubt or guilt or anger or any of all the other negative emotions they list off. We call them sociopaths. You meet somebody who doesn't feel fear, you meet somebody that has no common sense. A person who is unable to recognize danger when it's staring them in the face. You meet somebody who doesn't feel doubt or guilt. You meet somebody who never questions their own actions and promptly walks off into disaster. You meet somebody who never feels anger. You're not, not even over a righteous cause. They're not, you get my point. The emotions we list, we tend to look at as negative, are just as important to our survival as the ones we like. Well, I don't know if I'm even going to get. Look, I'm still working my way through the World of Warcraft characters. In the Warcrafter, I'm still working on them, getting through Worm. I haven't even gotten to phase 1 yet. So, I don't know if I'm going to get as far as writing a sequel where they get to Azeroth. The point is that those emotions is to not let them control you, to heed them, to learn from them, and to accept them, but not to let them control you. Not let any emotion control you. We've got a world full of people that let bliss control them. Let pleasure and happiness lead them around by the nose. I shouldn't say happiness, I should say pleasure, which most people mistake for happiness. What was that one movie, Eat, Pray, Love? You remember that? Eat, Pray, Love. Story of a woman who gets bored with her life, dumps her loyal but she said her loyal husband for being uninteresting, and then runs off, takes the money from the divorce settlement and runs off around the world, finding her bliss and eating in all these different restaurants. Everybody chasing their own pleasure and wondering why they're miserable. There's an old proverb. It says an old dog and a young dog were sitting on a porch one day. And old dog looks over and the young dog is spinning in a circle as fast as he can go. He says, "What you up to?" And the young dog says, "I just figured out the universe. I figured out since my tail wags when I'm happy, happiness is in my tail. So if I catch my tail, I'll be happy forever." And the old dog looks on you and he says, I noticed that a while back myself, and I figured out a couple of things. Yeah, the more I try and chase my tail, the further away it gets. But if I go about minding my own business, it follows along right after me. People spend their whole lives chasing the bluebird of happiness. If they just mind their own business, go about doing what they're supposed to, bluebird of happiness would follow along after them, if for no other reason than morbid curiosity. This is, it's just, they get this it's the same mistake they make. They get this, they made the same ethical mistake with the Pandharans that they did with the Jedi, because they're both, pseudo-Eastern mysticism, Hollywood mysticism. And I can't say that the real Eastern mysticism is much better, but Hollywood is, the diluted version, the quick tang orange juice version. That's why I always propose that, there should be another, there should be another faction of Force users in the Star Wars universe. The Jedi are functional sociopaths. The Sith are self-made psychopaths. My vision is that there should be a third group. I call them the Green Jedi, or the Vitae, Vitae, the Bella Vitae, the good life. Like all the others, they acknowledge that the Force isn't, it binds everything. It's connecting everything in the universe, right? But the Jedi insist that for a Force user has to abandon all connections. Does that or does that not sound backwards? They're trying to become one with a Force that connects everything, and so they have to shun all personal connections. You're going to be a little hard pressed to do both at the same time. My idea was that the Vitae, where the Jedi shun all emotions and feelings and connections, and the Sith, really the Sith shun all connections and positive emotions too, because their attitude is that mercy and compassion and caring are weaknesses. So they're both screwed up. The Vitae's attitude is that as the universe is made of connections, so I should be connected. Passion tells me to care. Love tells me to treasure something. Fear tells me to beware of a danger. Sorrow tells me to mourn. Happiness tells me to rejoice. So I am connected, so the Force is connected with me. I made that up on the spot. Yeah. So while the Sith are sitting over on the side, seething and raving and saying, "I shall be all powerful," and the Jedi are over here trying to meditate and disconnect from the universe, the Vitae over here on their own. They just finished the Kessel Run 5 parsecs. And they go, "That was awesome." Smash a beer can on their forehead and go, "Let's do that again." Now this was what the movie, and you saw the movie Inside Out. You saw the movie Inside Out. It made a very unsubtle point. And people have been using this movie as a footnote, as an illustration in the study of psychiatry and psychology, because it expresses concepts that are very difficult to get across to some people. That there are not good feelings and bad feelings. The whole plot of the movie was that you had all these, this one character and all her feelings. Some of her feelings she regarded as good, but one feeling, the sadness, she regarded as bad, and tried to shut out, and tried to shun, and tried to keep from having any influence. And how it unbalanced the character. It unbalanced the child, because she wouldn't let herself feel sad, because feeling sad was bad, and because she never let herself feel sad, she ended up bottling up all her feelings until she couldn't feel anything at all. And early on in the first few opening minutes of the movie, happiness was there to happiness is talking about how important the other feelings are. That fear was there to make sure to keep Riley away from danger, and disgust was supposed to keep her away from things, help her avoid things that would make her sick or unhappy or unpleasant, and anger was there to help her express what she thought was unjust. But she couldn't understand what the point of sadness was. It isn't until nearly the end of the movie that they finally accept that sadness, the point of being sad is so that, feeling sadness is to help her let other people know that she needed to be comforted. And you see also through the movie that when any one of these emotions is left uncontrolled, it's destructive. Rage is the most obvious one, but anger is the most obvious one. But sorrow left unsupervised caused all sorts of trouble. Fear, when he was left all by his lonesome to run the monitors, messed things up pretty good too. And disgust. Well, you get the point. We spend billions in this country on trying to avoid feeling sad. Now, I'm not talking I'm not talking depression. Depression is a real problem. It's a real illness, and it should be treated like a real thing and should be treated properly. But we seriously dedicate ourselves to avoiding sadness, even when we should accept it. And of course, we're not allowed to feel certain things about certain situations. Like they had an interview during the Gulf War. They asked one of the higher-ranking generals, I think it was, and he said, "Damn right, it feels good shooting those bastards." And she said, "Don't you feel horrified at killing all these people?" And he said, "No, it ought to feel good killing an evil man. There should be a sense of you kill a man, you find a man that has raped and murdered his way across the Iraqi desert, using women as bullet shields." There's nothing wrong and nothing evil about the soldier feeling a sense of satisfaction from putting a bullet through that bastard's head. And you can argue that if you want, but just the idea that he questioned the average vision is that the soldier should be back in his tent flogging himself with grief over having to kill this poor mass-murdering enemy soldier, we should feel good fighting the wicked. As they put it once in as I forget which character put it this way, in Babylon 5, he said, I haven't had a satisfying fight like that in years. He said, they were the bad guys, we were the good guys, and they made a most satisfying thump when they hit the floor. We are so unbalanced. We are so out of balance in regards to those things. I got to go back and read over some back chapters. Now I can't remember if it's Ladybird or the Warcrafter where they've already confronted and captured Coil, or if I'm just thinking of a chapter I was planning on writing yet. I'm going to do something very different with Warcrafter. It's not going to be the rogue heroes who bring Coil down. I'm actually, they're going to wake up when, basically it's going to be the Protectorate, the PRT that brings them down, brings Coil in. Neat and tidy and by the book. And Bailiff's going to wake up the next morning and read, Coil has been captured. And he's going, okay. Yeah. I remember when that series started out, it looked like Gakar was going to be the token bad guy. Surprise! Very different show, I suppose. My dad didn't like the show. He's a Baptist pastor. Babylon 5. I don't like that name. Babylon. So I'm like, okay, Dad. We'll work past that later. Well, I guess I haven't written that chapter yet. I kind of like the notion that, they don't, the main characters don't have to fix everything, There are other people working towards the same. Well, for instance, like in Warcrafter, the villain, what's his name? Saint got taken out almost completely by accident. That one I'm still working on, what they're going to do about Echidna. if he's captured in a smooth and tidy operation with by the PRT, they'll have a kid in, well, I'm just going to have to write it in C. It's very surprising. It's not surprising how often you're writing a story and developments form on their own. Some things, you can only see as, A results in B, B results in C, therefore D, E, and F. Well, anyway. Come tomorrow morning, I gotta call the IRS and wrangle with them over my payment schedule. It's yet to be seen what we'll do. Got two different stories with two different possible, they're going to be two radically different resolutions. The Yang, I'll tell you this much. In Lady Bird, the Yang Band are in for a real hell of a surprise. Because Celestia and Luna aren't the only ones sneaking around in the background.